Punishing Gray Raymond is one of the best gacha games you have never played. This game is super underrated because no one knows about it. Oh, thank God this is not one of those kind of videos. Look, so I've played PGR for nearly 2 years now, and it's become one of my personal favorite gacha games. Though, I've been hearing some comments about this game being one of the most amazing gacha games because its combat is second to none, but the only issue is that no one knows about it, and it's kind of left me a little bewildered. Not because no one knows about it, but it's because of how people would praise this game. So here's the thing, Wintry Shackles is coming soon, like real soon, and most people who barely knows about PGRs probably only seen Alpha's second frame going ham. Well, this upcoming patch is where she comes out, along with yet another S-rank selector, so perhaps people might want to jump on and give it a try. So with that in mind, I just want to talk about my thoughts on PGR. Starting with... In my humble opinion, the introduction or early section is the most important part of the game. It's what should get you hooked and give you a reason why you want to invest your time into their game. One of the ways the game could get you hooked is by either having a good story or tease what your journey will look like in the future. For the former, to me, PGR's story is sort of interesting, but it has a lot of setup. The issue is that the early story feels like a generic post-apocalyptic sci-fi story that is clearly inspired by Nier Automata, which it was, and it only starts to get interesting while establishing its own identity when Chapter 11 hits. Now, teasing what the game will look like in the future would definitely be challenging as PGR now looks vastly different from what PGR used to look like at release, especially with the fact that its biggest draw is in its action combat gameplay that varies depending on the character that you would use, and those characters would also be locked behind a gacha system, so there's that. Then there's also the case of the missions being, well, designed in the way that they are, which is, it's not good. I mean, look at this. And I know it can be better because, like, the later missions are somewhat actually a lot better. And then if you look at the current CN patch in PGR, I mean, it looks pretty sick. On top of that, there's also the situation with leveling your commandant, which would lock you out of certain systems until you're ready for it. Now, this is common among other gacha games, and PGR is no different, but it really adds to the growing pains. Suffice it to say, the whole early game experience is just an utter slog. It'd be cool if, instead of what we got in the original, they actually let us play as Alpha to dunk on Lucia in the beginning, to tease what PGR's combat could actually be like. And then they could probably streamline some of the gameplay elements and game modes. As for the story, not a lot I can say about it because the payoff is actually worth it. So if you enjoy it, great. But overall, man, the early game drags. The only saving grace is the mentor system, which pretty much helps you speed up the process to get out of the beginning section, though it definitely doesn't excuse how bad it feels. The combat in PGR is quite interesting for an action combat game. Instead of having two abilities that could go on cooldown or some button mash combo, PGR's combat revolves around their 3 ping signal orbs. Basically, a character would have a basic attack, 3 abilities each represented by a signal orb color, red, blue, and yellow, and a signature attack which is pretty much your ultimate. The thing is that you can only get these signal orbs at random by attacking the enemy with basic attacks. If you line 3 orbs of the same color consecutively and use them, you'll activate what's called a 3 ping, which adds an additional effect on top of the ability. If you do a perfect dodge, you'll activate a matrix dodge that goes on a cooldown and temporarily slows down time. While that happens, you can select 1 orb and it'll count as a 3 ping. What's interesting is that all of the characters have what's called a core passive, which interacts with the combat system and allows them to do unique things when fighting. Take Alpha for instance, where after you activate a 3 ping blue orb, any 3 ping afterwards temporarily changes her abilities into sword waves. Further down the line, newer characters will come out with even more complex core passives with descriptions and mechanics that rivals that of Yu-Gi-Oh cards, but create very unique gameplay scenarios. In fact, PGR has improved the depth of their combat through their characters over time, to the point where the community has had to divide the characters into first generation characters and second generation characters, as the gameplay and combat rotations are vastly different. In fact, second generation characters are so different that some go as far as to reduce some of the randomness from the orb generation and reorganize it for you. Other times, they just say screw it and ignore all of that. So why use first gen characters if second gen are as crazy as they are? Well, Kuro has got that covered. You see, every so often they would add what's called leap skills, which adds another angle to what some of these characters can do, and bring up their gameplay to be on par with that of second generation characters, but not necessarily better. Basically, they update older characters to fit in with the current state of the game. That said, the combat is exceptional and it really does set itself apart in terms of action combat. I didn't even mention the QTE system, where after a 3-ping you can temporarily summon your party members to help you deal some damage or apply a certain effect, or the Cubs, which support you by applying some additional damage or CC. Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. The story is incredibly complex, with a lot of layers, to a point where I don't think me explaining it will do it any justice. The best I got is sentient COVID is wiping out all of humanity, and also has the power to corrupt robots, but also give a select few superpowers to kill humanity more efficiently. Yeah, that's the best I got. The story is actually pretty decent, all things considered, but it's definitely not the greatest story I've read. But just know, you aren't reading a visual novel. You're reading a whole novel whose word count rivals that of the Bible. In terms of presentation, I think it's absolutely awful. It's mostly sprites that light up when they talk, with extremely minor facial expressions or movements, along with the occasional art panel or a cutscene. There are times when the presentation would look super ridiculous. I mean, look at this. This is supposed to represent the inner dialogue of a character, but like, the black bars are cutting his head off. Like, come on. Lower the character's sprite or zoom towards the face or something. Yeah, you're just better off ignoring what's on top of the screen and just read the lines. Then there's the general gameplay loop. Now, I'm not talking about the boss fights, because I'm pretty sure everyone who knows about PGR probably knows about how insane the boss design in this game could be. But for the most part, in the story, you're going to be running around in a limited zone with a somewhat bland backdrop owing to the dated engine that it's running on, and interacting with a few things, and mopping up some trash mobs. Doesn't sound that exciting, right? Well, that's because it isn't. Especially when we get to the current story missions, it seems like they exist to serve as a free trial to try out the new character by beating up some trash mobs, which then leads up to the chapter's boss fight. That's all it really is. For better or for worse, Kuro does try to change things up and vary its gameplay, much to the limitations that their engine imposes on them, but really it's whatever. Luckily, it's just a small section of the game that you have to interface with every so often. Here's the thing to remember. PGR is a gacha game. So that means you got your dailies, your weeklies, sometimes there's an event that has a unique minigame. You get the gist of it. For the most part, you are not going to spend more than 10 minutes playing PGR every day. To some, that's great. Do dailies, if a new update pops up, get the new character, build the character, play the story, fight the new boss, and boom, done with your day, go play Palworld or something. There's not really a lot to talk about here. There are, however, some challenges that you can tackle to test your skill and mulled over, like the Tower of Babel, which is always fun if you're up to it. But what about the gear grind? Well, here's the thing. There's not really a gear grind. This game has an equipment system that uses memories, which pretty much applies set bonuses. You're not necessarily fighting RNG to get the perfect stats like Genshin. Instead, you just level it up, throw resonance on it, level that up, and well, you're just good to go. The only RNG thing that's there would be your resonance, but you can always re-roll it or just force it to be the stats you want it to be. So what about the memory sets? Well, when you get second generation characters, the memories you'll be equipping may as well tell you to equip those memories on those characters, as those 4 set memories pretty much interact exclusively with those characters. It'll be like, hey, this is a Lee Hyperreal memory set. Okay, just equip it onto Lee Hyperreal. Job done. I mean, there's the nuance behind memory positioning, but it's not all that complicated. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Here's the thing, I hear from some people that this gacha game feels the least like a gacha game. And I really don't know what they mean, but I will say it's certainly strange for how generous Kuro games can be compared to most other gacha games in the market. For regular character banners, you're able to focus on a choice of 3 S-rank characters, or what this game calls constructs, that would be in a rotation with a pity rate of 70% when you roll 60 times. Sounds good, right? Well, when a new construct first debuts in a patch, the rate actually goes up to 100% after 60 rolls. Yeah, after 60 rolls, you can get a new character. No BS losing a 50-50 or in this case a 70-30. Just grab and go. So here's the thing, 60 rolls is only 15k black cards, the premium currency for this game. And you can easily get that amount within 1 or 2 patches depending on how much is in the patch. On top of that, Kuro games might drop in and just throw free pulls at you just cuz. That is not to mention the fact that they sometimes have a patch in between S-rank releases where they premiere an A-rank character, which you can get from the standard banner by doing 110 roll while focusing on them. And those tickets are generally free, you just get them every week. So yeah, that's actually mighty generous. And on top of that, there's also the case with the free S-rank characters and S-rank selectors that Kuro just simply hands you. You see, while Honkai Star Rail players are cheering over the fact that they got a free Dr. Ratio, PGR has around 3 S-rank selectors including the upcoming one, and a 6-star weapon selector. Additionally, they sometimes would release an S-rank character that you're able to obtain for free. Just recently, Isla's new frame just came out, but at the same time, you're able to grind for that frame through the dorm feature. Just like that. By the way, these frames are by no means weak. They're actually meta units, which is rather insane. It's like saying, here's a free Yelan, and oh, by the way, you could also grind to C6er. Bye! Look, the roster for PGR is pretty small, and the crazy thing is that the Kuro devs seem to be showering you in new characters. Like, I'm almost done filling out my roster of units that I want. Like, I'm missing 2 of them, and I know I'll get one of them from the selector in the next patch. And the crazy thing is, when the Best Girl patch comes out, yeah, Lamia's Best Girl, I know I'll be able to get the other. It's just really strange that they're just giving you characters just like that, you know? Not that I'm complaining. I'm just wondering, how do these people even make money? Sure, you can roll for what is essentially the equivalent of constellations, but honestly, as much as it is a power-up, it's not really that much of a big deal. Just kind of worries me, you know? Like, are they okay? Like, look at this production level of their dev docs. Like, really? Like, oh no. Do they even have an office? Alright, let's talk about the skins. There are some skins out there where you go, okay, that's cool. And then there are skins where Kuro tries a little harder and change the visual effects of the attack animations, have new intro and outro animations, and even new voice lines. Or Kuro will just go all out and change everything to the point where you even get a new lobby screen that has a unique character interaction. It's just so good. When Kuro's firing on all cylinders, they go all out. What's interesting for the case of the Nutty skins is that they have a gacha behind it. I mean, look, if they're going to be dropping characters on us left and right, they gotta make money somehow, right? Having moved from an emulator to the PC port, I can say, man, does the emulator feel way better. That's not to say that the PC port's awful, but there are some small annoyances that come from playing on that client. It's crazy to think that a game like this was even played on the phone in the first place. That said, there are some things in a mobile game that definitely seems out of place or doesn't translate well on a PC client. Like these very important QTE moments where it's important to interact with, but the issue is you need to summon your cursor to click on it. It's actually meant for a touchscreen. Or this minigame, good lord, this minigame. Again, this isn't a PC game, it's a mobile game. But this doesn't change the grievances that I have behind it. I'm reminded by the Monster Hunter World PC port when it first released. It was such a terrible experience. And honestly, I'm impressed that I even bothered to march through all that before some QoL changes were implemented. I don't know if this is a hot take, but I operate under the belief that if you want to make a game and port it to something that it wasn't initially designed for, you should at the very least make some design decisions that would accommodate for that port. I don't want to excuse the fact that I'm annoyed by this by saying, oh, it's a mobile game. I just want to have a fairly decent experience. Another odd thing that I sort of had an issue with is the English voice acting. It's really odd. When we go to the JP voice acting side, it's exceptional. But let's be honest, that's to be expected, especially with the big name JP voice actors that we know from anime and other games. Seriously, how are they able to afford this? Like, we got the voice of Kuro from SAO, or better known in his role as Xiao from Genshin. We also got the voice actor for Asuna from SAO. Heck, we even got the Queen of Tsundere's Rie Kugamiya herself. But more importantly, we have the Queen of Kudere's, Yui Ishikawa, who you may know as Enterprise from Azure Lane, Toki from Blue Archive, Chloron from Genshin Impact, Rappy from Nikkei, Mikasa from Attack on Titan, or Violet Evergarden. Yeah, she's everywhere. And you know what? It's nice because we get her in 2 different flavors, Alpha and Lucia. I just wanted to gush over that point. Just a big fan. So how are things looking on the dub side? Well, I don't have anything against the English VAs, but man, does it feel strange. I know they're trying, but a part of me feels like the direction is a tad off. Take Lee for instance. This is how he sounds in JP. Now, the Lee in EN is voiced by Chris Hackney. You know, the dude who voices Ayato in Genshin. This is what he sounds like.
Your chance of survival has been reduced to 0. Cease your existence at the end of time.
Yeah. Well, you know what? How about our good bean, Kuro's favorite daughter, Liv? Well, on the EN side, she's voiced by the same voice actor who voices Hu Tao from Genshin. And this is her now.
A world shrouded in darkness is not worth anything. That is why I wish to restore the light. You need not fear the darkness, for I shall be there to lead you forward.
And well, now Liv sounds like she belongs in a psych ward. At the end of the day, at least for this, it's just a matter of preference, but personally, I hope it gets better. Okay, so I have to say, Kuro's marketing is arguably the worst I've seen, well, ever. I mean, if anything, they may as well have no marketing at all. It's a really strange deal because everything PGR does feels very self-contained and honestly, a little cringe in my opinion. I mean, during the Bianca Bistigma patch for Global, Kuro decided to put themselves on the billboards in the New York Times Square. And I was like, yikes. Like, it's one thing if Genshin does it, because, most of the world at this point kind of recognizes the game. But like, PGR, a game that kind of has a reputation for, not being that well known, it's a bit much. The most marketing you'd actually see on this game would probably be from YouTubers like Rexlin. But in my humble opinion, I think the best marketing for PGR actually comes from Vanguard Sound Studio, the producers of PGR's music. Sure, Vanguard does make music for other games, but when they produce music for PGR, oh man, do they cook. They even did a music teaser for Wuthering Waves when it was initially announced, and it was pretty fire. You see, back then, I was browsing around YouTube just to pass the time when I happened upon Narwhal, which is what the players would call PGR's national anthem, as it's what would get some people into the game. So I decided to give it a listen, and I was like, yeah, this is kind of cool. And then there was also this cover art, which looked pretty cool. It's like, you know, when you find music that has a fan-made backdrop behind it and it looked pretty cool, and you wish it was actually a thing? Well, in this instance, the art is the actual thing. That aside, it had my attention, but it really didn't have my full interest. In fact, I wasn't even into EDM at the time. But then I happened upon Last Resort, and that's when everything changed. Everything from the character backdrop to the music sounded so awesome that it made me wonder, okay, whatever this music accompanies must be really epic. So I searched it up, and I was sold. I mean, after all, this is what I found. In truth, after I found out about the boss that would come out in the future alongside the frame that debuts with it, I was willing to go past all of the minor growing pains I've mentioned throughout this video. And honestly, it's one of the best decisions I've ever made. PGR is one of my favorite gacha games, but personally, I don't think it's underrated. Sure, not everyone knows about the game, and it certainly is a really good action combat game with some of the more creative and unique bosses to ever come out of its genre. But I also wanted to point out some parts of the game that could potentially rub you the wrong way. You know, just to temper expectations. Look, this game is a far cry from being perfect, and no one is calling it so. But this game is an experience that should be seen, not only through its boss fights or its combat, but as a whole package. I just wanted to throw my 2 cents out there since one of the most anticipated patches is coming, and also Kuro Games' next game, Wuthering Waves, is, well, making waves. So I know I didn't mention other things in PGR like the guild stuff or Norman game mode and whatnot, but we'd be here all day if that's the case. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about this game, really. I just wanted to ramble about this game. So yeah, that's it. That's the video. Now, since I have access to Wuthering Waves CBT2, I'm just going to spend every hour I can spare to play that. So bye!